Okay, my name is Robin, and I'm going to try to touch on a few weird things about some exhibits in our museum here and a little bit of the spooky stuff. So what I want to start with just right quickly here, I want you to notice these two blocks. So if you could maybe come around here, or I'll come in here. Come on over here. These two blocks were actually, let me just read that. They were butcher's chopping block used at the Gams Meat and Grocery Market from 1928 to 1960. So, since we're into the, getting into the Halloween season here, I just want you to use your imagination. These blocks would have been used, think of the big cleaver knives that they would have chopped the joints of the carcasses apart, and the blood and the guts would have run all over this. Just imagine that. But that's not the spooky part. The spooky part is this was used up until 1976, and you cannot sanitize that. That is the spooky part. And if you'll notice, we have the mold, which is feeding off that blood and guts that had infused into this wood. And to this day, it is still oozing out. Even though we have tried to clean it and sanitize it, it has a life of its own. So those are the chopping blocks. That, was part of our history. We're going to move on into talk about the doctor. And my dress. So come over in this part right here. So we'll just follow you around. Well, to start off, there's been, think of your horror movies, Frankenstein and stuff, the doctor, and some of the instruments they would have used back then. Anybody have a clue? Some of you will know what these things are. You probably.
Forceps.
For pulling the head of a baby out. I want you to notice the grip on that. Yeah, that doctor was going to force that baby out one way or another. And the shots, I want you to come here. You look at this. That big, and look at the needles. See how long they are? They're on the sides. That's how you would have gotten injections before. I remember the nurses using that. Anybody else remember that part? No. I must be a little older than you. Actually born in Greece, but he was a Frenchman, and all of his male relatives had been in the medical profession. So in 1932, he received his doctorate degree from Paris. And then he worked in a lot of the French hospitals, and he was an army surgeon, and he was eventually sent to New Orleans, which was originally a French colony. And if you remember, you girls had history, your American history, when was Louisiana purchased? 1803. So New Orleans would have been a part of the United States after 1803. But he was sent there, and he worked there, and then he went to California for a little bit, and eventually ended up in Pennsylvania before finding his way to Neuchatel, Kansas, which is just north of here. And he stayed there until Onega, the city of Onega, was founded in 1879. Then he moved to town. But he was a well-known doctor. He was called a naturopathic, meaning that he collected all of his herbs and plants to make his own medicines. Of course, there was no drug companies back then, so that's what he did. Just a couple other tidbits about him before I get into the weird stuff here. He did serve in the Civil War. He volunteered for the 7th Ohio Volunteers in 1861, but he was only there for 3 months because his wife had consumption, and so he went home to be with her until she died. He was also in the Mexican War, where he was wounded, and he was wounded twice in the Battle of Bull Run. So he was married 2 times. but he didn't ever have any children. He had an adopted son. So you will notice he has a special vest on with the 3 links there. So the odd thing about Dr. Dockler was that he joined the Omega Independent Order of Odd Fellows. Have you ever heard of the Odd Fellows before? Maybe? Yeah.
I've heard of it, not sure.
What it is?
What
Okay,
it is.
well, I'll explain to you.
Okay.
All right. And another odd thing was that he was 86 years old when he joined. And this was on October 31st, 1891, when they had and I'm going to say why it was on that date here. But you will notice those 3 chains. They represent friendship, love, and truth. And a lot of the old tombstones, you can see those links. And that means they were former members of the Odd Fellows. Well, the Odd Fellow organization, it was shrouded in secrecy, and there was a lot of things that went on behind closed doors that nobody knew about. So one of the things, the Odd Fellows, they were a charitable organization, so they did a lot of things for the community. And their mission statement says that they visit the sick, relieve the distressed, bury the dead, and educate the orphan. So they did do a lot of good in the community. Now, after the Civil War, fraternal organizations like the Odd Fellows was very popular. It was estimated that over 40% of the adult population belonged to one of these fraternal organizations. This one, well, like a lot of the fraternal organizations, after the Great Depression in the 1930s, there wasn't enough money to pay for dues and stuff, so a lot of the organizations closed, including the Odd Fellows. So they would just leave their props and their regalia in the closets, and years later here, the last few decades, a lot of these things have been coming to light. And one of the things that would show up would be coffins like this. Now this coffin, and they could have been large coffins. This is like a child-sized coffin, and they could have had, or they would have had a skeleton in there, either real or fake. But what they did with this, it was used during the initiation ceremony, and if you can imagine, like I said, October 31st is when they had his initiation ceremony. It would have been candlelit, it would have been dark. They would have had this coffin with a skeleton in there. The purpose of it being to make the initiative think about his immortality, that he was going to die at some point. But there was a lot of strange things that went on, like I said, behind closed doors, that once you were in the organization, you learned about, but you were committed to secrecy. You couldn't tell anybody about it. So when these coffins and skeletons started showing up in abandoned buildings, they were investigated, were these, a lot of them were paper mache, they were fake. Some of them were like medical specimens that were hinged, for medical study. Others would have fake skin, but the bones underneath were real. And then the other odd thing is that some members of different Odd Fellow organizations would donate their own bodies so their skeletons could be used in the initiation ceremony. Yes, so Uncle Bob, we're going to always have him with us, is what they were thinking, I guess. So were the Odd Fellows grave robbers then? Like I said, some of the skeletons were real, some were fake. They actually had a catalog where they could order all of their paraphernalia. They could get the skeletons, they could get the caskets, everything they needed. So that is our Dr. Dockler. He lived to be 103 years old, and I think he practiced up to almost the day he died, and he was living in Onega when he died there. So that is his legacy. Next stop, the dolls. Cute or creepy? What do you think? We have 2 dolls right here. Come on down this way. The Raggedy Ann dolls. Has anybody seen stories or movies? Come on around here, because we're going to look over here. About Annabelle, who was a Raggedy Ann doll. Anybody? I asked Debbie, well, the Annabelle doll, she is known to, and she's in a museum right now, but she is known to move around her museum. I asked Debbie, do these dolls ever move around? And she says, no, but they just showed up one day. Nobody knows how they got here. Well, with the smiles on their faces, I think they're very happy to be here. So we're kind of blessed that we don't have dolls that are moving around. But over here, we have a collection of some very old dolls. Come over here so you can see. I'm going to ask you, which one, come here, you're going to be my, which one do you think is the creepiest? That one? It doesn't have any eyes, does it? That's just a head. A lot of the dolls, well, Germany became popular, known as the toy-making country. And between 1840 and 1940, for about 100 years, you know, that's where all your dolls came from. They were mainly made in Germany. If you notice this one with the black painted on hair, that is a China doll. They are made either partially China or the whole body is China. But they're very fragile, so you know you couldn't just swing your doll around or go on places. You kind of just set her on a shelf and that's how you looked at her. So those kind of dolls were popular, the most popular between 1840 and 1890, and they were made in a lot of different countries in Europe besides Germany, but Germany was the main one. Then if you look at some of these, like the Kiwi doll there, they are a porcelain or bisque doll, and so their skin looks a little bit more matte, more natural, and not the shiny like the China dolls. And usually that one looks like it's all one material, but a lot of these dolls, you will notice that the head may be bisque, porcelain, but the rest of it is either leather or made out of some other materials. I don't know if that one's plastic or what. And like this one is wood. So, dolls have been around for centuries. From the beginning of human civilization, dolls have been made from natural materials. The reason being is that this bisque and China dolls, they get very heavy. So, you thought that one was the creepiest. Okay. Some dolls, the first talking doll, Thomas Edison made, and I'll show you a little bit about him. This one is, I think it's a composite doll, but its body, it is starting to decompose. Did you know that? It's sticky. But it has a cry box in it, and I don't think this one works anymore, but what they were called mama dolls, so that when you tipped them, there was a bellows in there, and they actually, mama, mama, is kind of what they sounded like. Like I said, Thomas Edison developed the first talking doll. I'm going to show you what it sounded like. It was in 1878 when Edison made the phonograph. 10 years later, he was looking for a way to use his wax cylinder, which was an improvement over the tinfoil one. Yes, yes. So he made a miniature one to fit inside of a doll, and you would hand crank it, and so it would play. He hired different women to record Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep, and things like that. Well, oh, come on. They were a commercial failure. I'm going to show you why, hopefully here. We're in a metal building. Is this going to work?
Probably his first failure to sell anything. He was pretty good at that.
Oh, dang. Oh, here we go.
I'm gonna use that for an entry on this new metal song.
The mouse ran up the clock. Hickory dickory dock. I think there's a twinkle twinkle.
son's story.
So, can you see why this might have been a commercial failure? It only sold for 4 to 6 weeks. Another part of it was that the dolls cost $200 in our money today. And for some odd reason, even though it was the first talking doll, people didn't like it that the mouths didn't move. But with that voice, that was just the killer. And even Edison called them his little monsters.
Sweet.
Yeah. So what's in store for our future dolls? Do you have a favorite doll? Like Barbie dolls or
Yeah.
what? Tell us.
I don't know.
Have you ever heard of a My Friend Kayla? That was in 2014. You may not have been born yet. 2014. My Friend Kayla. Craig, this has been a decade ago, so things have improved now, but it could hook up to the internet. So like you have Siri and Echo where you can ask them questions. You could ask the dolls questions. But the thing is, could these dolls be hacked? Yes, they could be. The researchers did that, so these dolls were saying bad words. And if anybody could, if they had ulterior motives or something that they wanted to project through these dolls, they could make them say anything they wanted. So that's kind of creepy there too. Let's move on around the museum here to our last stop.
Mom taught me.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I moved it. Somebody moved my photo. Oh, just in passing, this is not really creepy or scary, it's just gruesome. I'm just going to point it out. This was a Japanese soldier who was in the foxhole, and when they used the flamethrowers, he was burnt. So you can glance at that, and we'll move on. So come on over this way. We're going to do our last one. We're going to talk about death photos. But first I'm going to give you just a little bit of history on the development of the camera. 1400s to 1800s, the only way you could get an image somewhere with a camera obscura. Have you ever seen a drop of rain or maybe condensation running down the side of your glass, and if the light's just right, you can see a reflection in that? It'll always be upside down. That is a primitive camera obscura. So that was the first way to see an image, but you couldn't capture it. And it wasn't until 1827 when a Frenchman, Joseph Niepce, made the first permanent photograph by using a metal plate coated with asphalt, lavender oil, but Tolman, and he put it in a camera obscura and exposed it from 9 to 48 hours. It's kind of a controversy of how long it took. But he was able to capture an image that was permanent on his paper. It was blurry, of course, and so, very impractical to have that long of an exposure time. Well, in 1839, Louis Daguerre came along, and he got the exposure time down to 30 seconds. So you still, if you had a person taking a picture, you had to be perfectly still to take that picture, otherwise it would be blurry. So Daguerre types were popular between 1840 and 1860. And they were kept in small cases like this, 2 3/4 by 3 1/2. And they were one-of-a-kind print. You couldn't make more pictures from them. They were printed on silver-plated sheets of copper. And we do have one daguerreotype here. Most of these are tin types and amber types, which I'll talk about here in just a little bit more. But this one I'll pass around. If you look at it, the image, since it's on that silver, it's kind of a ghostly image. It kind of floats.
Iridescent kind of. Yeah, I see what you mean.
It floats there.
That's neat. What a big breakthrough, first picture ever.
Yeah, and they would have been backwards, so reversed. Yeah, his left ear would have been his right ear. Can you see kind of how it just floats there?
You know, I could do that with take a picture and flip it over.
And flip it over, yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen it done. I don't know how to, but
Well, they were very fragile and expensive, so only the rich people had the daguerreotypes. Well, the amber types came along 1855, 1865, kind of an overlap there. And they weren't as expensive because they were developed on glass instead of the silver-plated copper sheets. But they were also stored in these small little albums. So all of these are amber types. They're on glass, so they won't have that floating ghostly image that you usually see. Then another invention was an American inventor in 1854. He was able to patent a way to develop that image just on glass, a high quality piece of glass treated with a light sensitive material, put it in a camera to expose it. But when it was developed, it would be a negative. So the white parts would be black and the black parts would be white. And where did I put that? Oh, right here. So this is a later version though. I just want to show you what a negative is. I can get this to come open. Because I know you younger kids don't know what this is. We used to have film cameras. This is a negative. So you can see what was white here is black on this side. Okay? So it would have been this type of image that he would have had. And then what they did was paint the back with a black varnish or put a black mat on it, and it would give the illusion of a positive image. So that was the next development of it. And then we've got the tin types, were very popular during like the Civil War. They were very inexpensive, actually printed on tin. If you look at the back of that, that is actually tin that is on. So to get pictures, you know, some photographers would have studios set up in town. Others would take their wagons and travel around, especially to the rural farmsteads. People didn't have an opportunity to take a picture, so when a traveling photographer came around, they would all get outside, the family would get outside their house, bring all of their most important items. It might be the horse and buggy, it might be the dog. I've seen pictures with, they had these huge elk antlers. And of course all the kids and everybody to get your one picture. Well, so you didn't have very many pictures, not like us today on our cell phone where we're just clicking away. What became popular was that when someone died, they would take a death photograph. And that might be the only picture they have of that person because they just didn't take pictures. Well, there's a story of this one guy who just thought that was awful, and he thought the photographers were taking advantage of the grieving families and, you know, taking their money. He didn't think that should be done. Well, it happened one day, his young son drowned in the river, and so he rushed to town and he begged that photographer to come take the picture of his son because he knew that was all he was going to have left of him. Now over here in this corner, you're going to see a picture of, what is his name?
Robin, I still do.
Ira William
You still what?
Ross.
I still take pictures of the dead.
Of the dead?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't a gruesome
When I-
thing. No.
Well, it is. But you know something that beats the hell out of not having one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
not having a picture. This young man, this is Ira Bossy. Now, it is printed on glass. I have not seen behind this to what it is, but you can see that it's been hand painted. That's what you could do with the glass photographs. The sad thing with this is little Ira not long after this was taken, he died of the Spanish influenza in 1918. So, that's kind of similar to our COVID that we just had. He died there. So I am going to show you, hopefully my computer work here, some death photos, which are kind of, I don't know, they're kind of cool, I think, to look at. So you're going to have to come over here, come behind me. Okay, so this one, can you see it? Who's the deceased person in this picture?
The one in the middle.
The one in the middle. She's perfectly still. She did not move. But the family wanted a picture with her. And her eyes are opened. Some death photos, if the eyes weren't open, they would paint eyes on them to make them look like they're living. And some of them were very not well done, so they were actually freaky, more freaky looking. This one I think is just a beautiful picture that can you see that? They posed her as if she were sleeping. Just a beautiful picture. Would be a nice reminder. This one, who do you think has died in this picture?
Little girl.
The little girl. She was small enough that they could prop her up. You could not do that with an adult. But the family wanted all the siblings together. So they did that. I've seen other sibling pictures where the siblings would actually be, one would be deceased and the other one was living, and they would be like cuddling. This one's kind of a gruesome one. Let me read you what the caption is. This is Carrie L. Parsons, his wife and 3 children were murdered by Joseph Hamilton and thrown into the river. You'll be happy to know that Hamilton did die for his crimes. He was hung. So there was no reason why he did that. But they took a picture of the family. This one I think is just beautiful. When I first saw this, I thought, look how that family is arranged. They must have died like from smoking inhalation, I thought, because there's no trauma on them. Then I read the caption. The wife was known to have some mental illness. She shot her husband in the heart while he was kissing her. Then she shot her baby, and then she shot herself in the temple. So it was a murder-suicide. And the mortician arranged it so her forehead was resting against her husband, so the wound couldn't be seen. But again, that's our death photos. So, I hope you have enjoyed our little spooky and weird tour of the museum.
Popular camera was?
What?
You know what the most popular camera was?
What was the most popular?
Brownie.
The Brownie. I believe that. Didn't everybody have a Brownie?
Everybody had a Brownie.
Are you even that old? You and I are probably the oldest ones here, Joe.
Nope, I am.
Oh, okay, Diane, we'll give you that to you. So,
Some of the most popular photos ever taken were with a Brownie. World War II photos?
yeah,
taken
with a Brownie.
Oh,
And were they the type where you looked down
no.
into it, the film?
This is the Brownie right here.
Yes, but some of them, this one, you looked down instead of holding
No.
it up like this.
My sister's was like like this.
They had it up. I think
And they had a
that one.
flash like that.
Huge,
It hooked to the
huge.
top. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole other story. If you guys are interested
Yeah.
in cameras, there is a lot of information. Oh, darn. I got one more thing to show you. Sorry. Just right quick. This is really cool. AI today, what they can do. We'll see if this will come up.
I like them.
We got to get through the
because I
commercial
love my
first.
mom.
Secrets of friends you get to.
Sorry. All right, so they can take old photographs, and I'm actually going to spin it through here. Okay. I don't have internet on that camera or on that computer, so that's why here. So they've colored it, and if you watch closely, the eyes are blinking. We'll just look at a few of them here. You see him moving? So with AI computerization, they're able to do that. Just gorgeous. But what I want you to see, after they come to life, and they're colorized, they're moving, then watch over here as they go back. I think that's actually more spooky. It's like they just freeze again. Like they're dead.
Yep.
So if you would like to see this whole thing, it's like runs for 10 minutes. We're not going to watch all that. There is a QR code right there that you can click on there and see that. It's just kind of fascinating to watch them come to life and then go back to sleep. So that is all I have for you today.
Well,
Hope
thank
you
you.
enjoy the rest of your trip around here.